The bitter December wind howled through Manhattan's financial district as Marcus Chen hurried down Fifth Avenue, his daughter Emma's small hand tucked safely in his. At 7 years old, she was already developing his keen eye for detail, a trait that would change 3 lives that freezing night. "Daddy, stop." Emma's voice cut through the rushing crowd of holiday shoppers. "That baby isn't moving." Marcus followed her pointing finger to a subway entrance where most people's eyes simply glazed over, trained by city life to look away from discomfort. There, huddled against the concrete wall, sat a young woman clutching an infant wrapped in a threadbare blanket. The mother's lips were blue, her whole body trembling, but it was the baby's stillness that made Marcus's heart stop. "Daddy, her baby is freezing." Emma's voice cracked with urgency, tugging his hand. "We have to help them." Marcus Chen hadn't built a multi-million-dollar tech company by overthinking. He'd built it by acting when others hesitated. In 3 strides, he was kneeling beside the woman, Emma right behind him. Miss, can you hear me?" The woman's eyes fluttered open. They were gray, hollow, defeated. "I'm calling an ambulance." "No hospitals," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "They'll take Lily. I'll lose her." A tear froze on her cheek. I'm not a bad mother. I lost everything." Marcus felt Emma's hand slip into the woman's. His daughter, who'd lost her own mother to cancer just 2 years ago, understood loss in a way most 7-year-olds never should. "What's your name?" Emma asked softly. "Sarah." The woman's eyes fixed on the little girl. "Sarah Mitchell." Marcus made a decision that his board of directors would have called reckless. His accountant would have cautioned against it. His late wife, though, she would have approved. "Sarah, I'm taking you and Lily somewhere warm. Right now. No hospitals, I promise. But that baby needs heat immediately." 20 minutes later, they were in Marcus's penthouse apartment. While Sarah protested weakly, Emma had already disappeared into what used to be her mother's closet, emerging with armfuls of clothes. Marcus turned the heat up, made hot tea, and called his personal physician, a woman he trusted absolutely. Dr. Patel arrived within the hour. After examining baby Lily, she delivered the news that made Marcus's jaw clench. Another hour in that cold, and this would be a very different conversation. "This baby has moderate hypothermia. She needs monitoring, warmth, proper nutrition." She turned to Sarah with kind but serious eyes. "When did you last eat?" Sarah's silence was answer enough. Over the next few days, Marcus learned Sarah's story in fragments. She'd been a graphic designer, a single mother making it work until her landlord illegally evicted her while she was at work. In one afternoon, she'd lost her apartment, her possessions, and her foothold in a city that showed no mercy to those who stumbled. Her family had disowned her years ago when she got pregnant. She'd been on the streets for 3 weeks, too ashamed to ask for help, too afraid of the system to seek shelter. "I just needed a break," Sarah said on the 3rd evening, tears streaming as she fed Lily formula Marcus had bought. "Just one break. One person to see me as human again." Emma sat beside her, coloring a picture of 3 stick figures under a rainbow. "We see you, Sarah." "Right, Daddy." Marcus had been staring at his laptop, barely seeing the acquisition reports on the screen. His mind had been working through a different kind of problem. "Sarah, I want to offer you something. Hear me out completely before you answer." He explained his situation. A single father building a company, raising a daughter who missed having a mother figure around. Emma's nanny had just retired, and he'd been dreading the interviews, the strangers. His penthouse had a guest suite sitting empty. He needed someone trustworthy in the home. "I'm offering you a job. Live-in nanny and household manager. Separate quarters, full salary, benefits, childcare stipend for Lily. You'd have time to rebuild your design career if you want. Or not. Your choice." Sarah stared at him like he'd spoken in ancient Greek. "You don't know me. I'm homeless. I could be anyone." Dr. Patel ran a background check, Marcus said bluntly. "I'm a CEO, not naive. You're exactly who you said you are. Someone who got dealt a bad hand and kept protecting your child anyway. That's exactly the kind of person I want around my daughter." "But why?" Sarah's voice broke. "People don't just do this." Emma looked up from her drawing. "My mommy used to say that kindness is just love with its work boots on. She said when you can help, you should, because everyone needs help sometimes." Marcus felt the familiar ache in his chest. My wife used to volunteer at shelters. She always said the only difference between us and the people there was luck and timing. She made me promise that if I ever had the chance to really help someone, not just write a check but actually change a trajectory, I'd take it. So I'm taking it. The following weeks transformed the penthouse in ways Marcus hadn't anticipated. Sarah proved to be extraordinary with Emma, patient, creative, understanding the grief that still sometimes overwhelmed his daughter. Lily began to thrive, her cheeks growing round and pink. The apartment filled with the sound of children's laughter, something Marcus hadn't realized he'd been missing desperately. Sarah's design skills turned out to be exactly what Marcus's company needed for their rebranding campaign. Within 3 months, she wasn't just the nanny, she was a contracted designer with her own office at Chen Technologies. But the real transformation was harder to quantify. It was in the way Emma stopped having nightmares about being alone. It was in how Marcus started leaving work at reasonable hours, drawn home by the warmth there. It was in Sarah's eyes, where the hollow desperation had been replaced by hope and purpose. 1 year later, Marcus stood in his living room during Emma's 8th birthday party. Sarah was coordinating a dozen excited children while simultaneously handling a client call for her now thriving freelance design business. Lily, toddling around at 13 months, was being carefully monitored by Emma, who'd appointed herself chief baby guardian. His COO, Janet, appeared at his elbow. "You know, when you first told me you'd hired a formerly homeless woman to live in your home and watch your daughter, I thought you'd lost your mind." Marcus smiled. "I remember. You scheduled an emergency board meeting." "Well, I was wrong. Sarah's rebranding work increased our market appeal by 40%. But more than that," Janet gestured to Emma, who was laughing in a way she hadn't since before her mother died. "You gave that kid her smile back." "Emma saved them," Marcus said quietly. "She's the one who stopped. She's the one who saw them when everyone else looked away." That night, after the guests had left and the girls were asleep, Marcus found Sarah in the kitchen, cleaning up. "You don't have to do that. That's not your job." "Force of habit." She smiled, and he marveled at how different she looked from the broken woman on the street corner. "Marcus, I've been meaning to talk to you. I've saved enough now for a deposit on an apartment. I think it's time Lily and I found our own place." Marcus felt something twist in his chest. "Is that what you want?" Sarah set down the dish she'd been washing. "What I want is to not take advantage of the most extraordinary kindness anyone has ever shown me. What if I told you that Emma asks me every week if you and Lily are going to stay forever? What if I told you that this place hasn't felt like a home since my wife died, until you brought life back into it?" He stepped closer. "What if I told you that somewhere along the way, this stopped being charity and started being family?" Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "You've already given me so much. You've given us more," Marcus said simply. "You gave Emma someone who understands loss but chooses joy anyway. You taught her that helping people isn't about pity, it's about recognizing our shared humanity. And you taught me that the best investments aren't on spreadsheets. They're in people." 3 years after that frozen December night, Emma Chen stood in front of her class for a school presentation about heroes. She didn't talk about superheroes or celebrities. She talked about a night when she'd seen a freezing baby and convinced her father to stop. She talked about Sarah, who'd rebuilt her entire life through determination and grace. She talked about Lily, now a rambunctious 3-year-old who called her Big Sister. But mostly, she talked about what her mother had taught her, that kindness was love with its work boots on, and that every single person deserved to be seen. In the audience, Marcus sat next to Sarah, watching his daughter speak with confidence and compassion. He thought about spreadsheets and success metrics, about all the ways society measured worth. Then he looked at his family, cobbled together from loss and chance and choice, and knew that the most important investments couldn't be quantified. They could only be lived. Outside, snow began to fall on the city, soft and gentle. And somewhere, in countless subway entrances and darkened doorways, people huddled against the cold, waiting for someone to see them. Waiting for their own Emma to stop and say, "Daddy, we have to help." Waiting for kindness to put on its work boots and get to work.